James Armstrong Richardson was born in Kingston, Ontario in 1885. He attended Queen's University and received his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1906. After graduation, James and his brother George entered the family business founded by his grandfather, James Richardson and Sons, one of Canada's greatest grain exporters. James became the firm's member-at-large, spending much of his time traveling, keeping tabs on its distant activities. In 1909, he first came to Winnipeg. In 1912, it became his permanent home. That same year, he first surveyed the location of James Richardson and Sons' most important grain terminal in Port Arthur, which was later known as Thunder Bay.
When he was looking for a location for our first grain terminal in Thunder Bay, he literally walked the shoreline for miles until he found the spot that he thought would be the best location for the grain terminal. A very determined and hands-on individual.
The First World War took a heavy toll on Canada, and amongst the casualties was James's brother George Richardson, who was killed in combat at age 30. The news of his brother's passing hit James hard. He considered enlisting himself, but upon the counsel of his uncle and the Prime Minister of Canada, he was reminded that it was more important for him to lead the firm, which gathered and transported Canada's wheat and was key to the Allied cause. Devastated, James set out to do alone everything he and his brother had planned to do together. With determination, he pursued many initiatives for the firm. With his sister Agnes, he fulfilled one of his brother's last wishes by turning a family island property into a convalescent home for injured soldiers. It was working on this project that fate smiled on James. It was there that he met Muriel Sprague. The two were married in the spring of 1919. The same year, James became the fourth president of James Richardson and Sons Limited. James was always fascinated with the opportunities presented by communication and technology and was always looking for new innovations.
He loved new technology. He at one time supported and invested in a company run by a Dr. Kalmus that later became Technicolor. Shortly after becoming president, he established the first private wire service in Canada.
He had farmer customers through our grain company, and he saw them speculating on commodities, and he thought that they would be better served if there was a proper brokerage firm in the West that could help them. So he started what eventually became Richardson Securities, but it was a firm that offered stocks and bonds that he felt would be better investments for his farmer customers. So he's always somebody that could see needs and then moved in to fill them.
As evidenced by the new operations he started while he was in his presidency, he was always looking for new opportunities and as such was very entrepreneurial. But I think he was calculated in his risks, and 3 years after establishing the brokerage firm Richardson Securities was the stock market crash. He was concerned about where the market was at and actually had taken most of our clients out of the market when the crash happened. So that company came through the depression and through the crash and went on to prosper for the next 70 years. So I think he was, at the same time as being entrepreneurial and a risk taker, he was very careful that he didn't put the entire organization at risk over any one venture.
In the 1920s, access to the Canadian North was almost impossible. Without roads, isolated communities were only reachable by canoe or dog sled. This was a huge problem for the mining industry. With much activity in the North, James saw a huge opportunity after a chance encounter.
He was a large man, but he had a big vision for his company and his country. There's so many little stories from meeting a bush pilot and talking about, opening up the North and getting into air transport, and the next thing you know, he started Western Canada Airways.
He took delivery of a new airplane for Canadian Airways. It arrived at the Alexander Street dock. It was a float plane, a large cargo plane, and he learned about it while he was having lunch in the company cafeteria. He asked all the employees that were in the cafeteria if they'd like to come and take a ride with him on the new airplane. So they all made their way down to the Alexander Street dock and loaded on this large cargo airplane, and as it was pulling away, a young fellow from the mailroom arrived at the dock late and was there as the plane pulled away, and there was a reporter from the Winnipeg Tribune he asked the young fellow what he thought. He thought for a minute and he said, well, I think if that plane doesn't come back, I've got a good shot at being the president.
In the 1930s, James expanded the airline by joining forces with other small airlines and created Canadian Airways Limited during the Depression. In 1937, the government announced its own Trans-Canada carrier, putting an end to James Richardson's aviation dreams. James Richardson died suddenly at the age of 54. A true entrepreneur, he boldly ventured into uncharted territory, overseeing the start of the firm's financial services, investing in technology, and pioneering in aviation. His legacy lives on today.
His legacy is embodied in so much of what we do as an organization, a family business today, and his vision and dream for aviation, that he was honored posthumously as the father of civil aviation in our country, and had the great honor of having the Winnipeg International Airport being named the James Armstrong Richardson International Airport.